Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Donna Norris. I'm a soul level intuitive, soul level animal communicator, and a psychic medium. And this episode that you're watching tonight is one of the Awakening Journey series. This is where I want to spotlight some of these wonderful people, mystics, mediums, psychics, healers, all kinds of folks that I've met along my journey in hopes that it will allow you to get to know them and see that, you know, we all have a different mix of abilities and things that we bring to the table, and hoping also that some of these folks might resonate with you. So with that, I want to make sure you know that I'll be putting information on how you can contact any guest on any episode in the description. So please, after you hit like and subscribe, go ahead and feel free to check that out so you can get in touch with them. So tonight, the person I have here, my very special guest, is Michael Christopher. He is a professional evidential medium and has been offering his services as a medium for somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 years now. Is that right,
It
Michael?
is. Time has flown by.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I know. Just like the readings, they're just whew.
Yeah.
Anyway. So what I'd like for you to do, Michael, if you don't mind, is just kind of tell us a little bit about your journey into this side of life, as they say. I know you have background in the military, and
Mhm.
I'm not really sure about your education. So please
Yeah.
let us know a little bit about you.
Sure. So yeah, I will start by saying my journey, like many others, is probably a long journey. At least mine was. So it's kind of weird because I don't have a starting point. It's always interesting to go back and try to figure out a starting point because everything's kind of intertwined. But I'll start with first, yes. I did serve in the military. I was in the Air Force for 20 years, retired in 2009. I was an air traffic controller during my time in the Air Force and then afterwards too in the
Oh,
civilian sector. So that was my profession for almost 34 years, which I just left last year. So the mediumship was
wow.
kind of on the side. Yeah. But so the journey, wow, where do I begin? I will start by saying I am not one of those people that you typically hear about that had an awareness of their abilities early on in life. You hear the countless stories about, grandma showing up at the foot of the bed or, having these interactions when you're really young. I don't personally recall them. Um, I've tried to look back, and I just don't recall them. This didn't really kick in until I was age 45. Now, the journey leading up to that was kind of it's almost like a story. You can't make this stuff up. There's a lot of
Yeah.
details, so I'll just kind of give you the Reader's Digest because there's a lot to it. Um,
Okay.
I will start in 97. Um, so I had two brothers that had cystic fibrosis. In
Oh,
97,
wow.
unfortunately, I lost my first brother, Jason, when he was 26 years old, from complications from CF. He was on a transplant list, but by the time he was listed for a transplant, it was too late, and unfortunately, he didn't survive. And that was actually the first loss that I had on a peer level. I had lost a couple of my grandparents by then, but a peer level, so that was it, that hit me hard. So that was my first time really experiencing that.
Yeah.
Um, 3 years after that, I want to say, yeah, about 2000, I was diagnosed with a kidney disease out of nowhere. It literally came out of nowhere. I was not feeling ill. It was just I was going in for a physical to learn how to fly planes. Um,
Oh,
yeah, and what had happened during that physical is they found some markers of kidney problems. Long story short, had a biopsy, all that good stuff, determined, yeah, it was a kidney disease. It was fairly progressed. Again, no physical symptoms. And that was my first like experience with having to face my mortality. I almost died at birth. I did have a life-saving surgery then too, but I don't remember any of that. So I don't really count it. It was there, yes, but this was the first time that I was really aware of what's going to happen, and it was my first lesson. I had to adjust my behavior, my way of thinking, and living in the now, living in the moment, and really train myself not to worry about what may happen in the future. Because if I did that, it would just invite laziness or just that, why should I do this attitude? This is
Sure.
going to happen anyway. Why? So, you hear people talk about that all the time. We have to live in the moment. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And usually it's just tongue in cheek. But for me, it's like I literally had to adopt that behavior, or I probably would have gone insane just with worry. It wasn't easy, I had my times, but that was my life. Shortly after that, my other brother, Danny, in 2001, had a double lung transplant. So he went through that. It was fine. Right after that, so that was around 2001. Um, 5 years later, he went through rejection. His lungs rejected. Usually they don't
Oh,
attempt a second transplant, but they did. Again, long story short, but he went through that, came out fine. Um, so we'll go to 2010. I had retired from the Air Force in '09, so this is a year later. My kidneys failed, so I had to start dialysis and looking for a transplant myself. Um, Luckily, all my family tested. My one other brother tested. He was a perfect match 2 weeks before the surgery. After 6 months of dialysis, um, they called off the surgery because he got a staph infection, which turned MRSA. So I'm like, all ready for
mm,
this, and nope, there goes that option. Short time later, maybe a week and a half, a friend of mine that was in the Air Force with me heard about it, reached out. Again, long story short, he wanted to do this, so tested, perfect match. December of 2010, I had my kidney transplant. Um, so 2012, again, Danny ended up going into kidney failure, started dialysis himself, but a short time later, um, ended up with lymphoma cancer in his lungs, and he ended up passing at 42. And so that was 2012. And then this is where really everything got turned around. 2015, my sister was murdered, and that was like it was a very confusing time for a lot of reasons. Um, Again, long story short, I know I've said this a couple times, but there's so many details. It's hard
okay.
not
It's
to
quite a
talk
bit of
about
stuff
it.
there.
Yeah.
That's a lot to unpack.
And I failed to mention that through the years, especially when I found out about my diagnosis, I had found John Edward on TV, and that was my first like experience with a medium. I'd never thought about mediums before, and it was something about that just fascinated me and captivated me.
Yeah,
And
his
from that,
crossing over show.
yep,
Yeah, yeah,
yep, from that
good
point
show.
on, it was like not only watching his show, but reading about mediums. And it was just a fascination. And also through those times that I was dealing with my own issues, it gave me this comfort. It at least gave me the idea or possibility that something exists beyond the physical world. And I think that alone really gave me a lot of comfort dealing with my own medical issues, that, if things didn't work out, all right, there's this other thing,
Yeah.
So again, I had to bring that up because that was a big part of my journey as well, all the books that I read over the years. But getting back to when Jackie passed, it was maybe a few weeks after she passed that I had my absolute first experience with something that you could say was paranormal. Um, I had gotten up for work one morning, and it was just me, 5 o'clock in the morning. I was out in the kitchen doing, getting things ready. And I had this feeling that somebody just walked in the room. I mean, we've all had that. You can feel when somebody
Oh,
walks in the
yes.
room, right? That's what I felt. And I turned around and nobody was there. I was like, that was strange. Go back to doing what I was doing. A couple minutes later, it happened again. But this time in my mind, I saw an image of my sister standing behind me. And I was like, what is happening? Because not only did I see her in my mind, but I felt the energy of her being in the room, just like somebody was there. And so again, I'm seeing this in my mind, but I'm feeling the energy. And in my mind, I see her walk up behind me, and she kind of puts her arms around me. She's standing behind me. She puts her arms around me and puts her head on my shoulder. And I I was freaking out because I was like, what is happening? I, I just going through the moments of I was not thinking of her, what is going on? And it probably lasted maybe 30 seconds, and then
Right.
everything kind of dissipated. And I don't think I talked about it with anybody for almost 2 weeks. Um, but that's kind of how things started, which led me to talking to a medium about her case, actually, which led to some other things happening that kind of put me on that road. So
Sure.
that's the mediumship part of it. I wanted to pause there because I'm Italian and I will talk and talk and talk and talk.
That's okay. We both
So,
seem to talk with our hands too, so it's
oh
all good.
yeah, it's a
Skip
bad
right ahead.
habit. But so yeah, that's kind of how things started with her or with that moment. And I'll throw in one more thing because this next point was really, I would say it's a big part of like her experience, that experience, and what happened next was I had found these two psychics. Um, Never saw a psychic before, but her case was unsolved for almost 5 months. So I had looked for these people, found a website, contacted them. So we started
Mhm.
talking and they were helping me. They didn't ask anything of themselves. And so we got to know each other a bit. And it was probably a second or third conversation with one of them. And I said, okay, I need to share something. I had an experience and I didn't give any details. Um, the one lady I was talking with, she kind of just tuned in and validated the situation with Jackie. And I was like, okay, that gave me comfort. One, I wasn't losing my mind and it was a real experience.
And it really
Um,
was her.
yeah. Yeah. Like again, I didn't
Wow.
give her any details. She kind of just laid out the situation like I experienced it. And I was like, okay, I know that was real. Um,
Wow.
yeah. And maybe a few conversations after that, while talking to this same woman, um, as we're talking this one time, I hear in my mind, tell her it's Jim. And I'm like, so I had that thought. It was like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And I ignored it. A few seconds later, it came back, it said it again. And I was like, what is going on? Finally, the third time I heard, tell her it's Jim. I passed the cancer. So again, I just thought this is a thought. Finally, I stopped her. I was like, Linda, I'm having this. I don't know what's happening. I keep hearing this voice in my mind say, tell her it's Jim. And he's telling me that he passed from cancer. And she said, that's my father. And I was like, what? And she's like, you're a medium. And I'm like, no, I'm not. We had we had this friendly argument for about
Yeah.
5 or 10 minutes. And I was like, she tried to
I,
convince me, and I was like, no. So yeah, that's kind of the really compressed journey
yeah.
over like 20 some years that put me on this road.
And as much as you think about it and you read about it and you kind of you understand what that is, the first time somebody tells you that, you're just like, no, not
But
me. What? Who, me?
exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yep. It
Exactly.
That's how it was. It
Wow.
really
So at
was.
that point, did you start to take any classes or work with anybody, or
I did.
how did it go?
So shortly after that conversation I had with her, she said, you should probably just take this class. She had a friend of hers that she had worked with. She said it's a beginner class. It's like an intuition development class. I really think you should just take it. She goes, just take it and see what happens. So I reluctantly did, and um, it was interesting for a couple reasons. Even though I had read all those years and all those books and watched mediums, I don't recall ever being told, heard, read exactly how the process worked. So in my mind, a medium was somebody who saw spirit like they saw a person. That was a medium. It was
Oh,
all an
right.
actual physical experience. So I didn't think anything of it. So this class was like 4 weeks. Each week was working with a different clair. And it was like the first week was clairvoyance. And I remember that aha moment when Mimi was her name, who taught the class. She's like, all right, we're getting into this clairvoyance. This is how it works. And she explained that most mediums experience visions in their mind, in their mind's eye. And I was like, okay. And then she added a little bit more to that and some examples. And there's something that clicked. And I started thinking, I was like, this is very familiar for some reason. The
Hmm.
next week was clairaudience, and the same thing. It's like not hearing out externally, it's within your mind. And I was like, oh my God. And then, a couple more clairs a few weeks, one after the other. Everything started clicking, and I started looking at situations in my life and going, okay, that makes sense. So I can recall a few experiences that I had, just didn't realize it was anything special or, you know, which I think is a good point because if it's something that's already part of you, you don't think of anything about it, like that gut
Yeah,
feeling. You're like, okay, it's that little gut feeling telling you don't do this, don't do that, but you don't think of it being like something beyond, if you will.
right. No, you think everybody does that. Everybody has that, but they
Exactly.
don't.
I believe we're born with it, but I think a lot of people suppress it,
Yes.
and
Not
don't think
everybody
about
feels
it.
it like, yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right. And if I know you being a medium yourself, you've probably heard endless stories about how most of us get put on this journey, and it's usually the result of a tragic situation or some kind of trauma that really blows the doors off. When you go, especially if you question your mortality or you have to deal with something like that happening, you start looking for answers for things, and it puts you
Yeah.
on that path.
And this is once you finally internalize this belief and this knowledge that there is more
Hmm.
to what we just see here in the physical world, that there's so much peace that comes with that. So I'm sure it had to, just the breakthrough had to bring you a lot of comfort for your brothers and your sister's sake, as well as for your own, you know.
So much peace, because it just again that the idea that we go on. At least I'm 99.9% sure we do. Nobody knows until we're there. But I'm not that confident that there's more. And it does. I mean, just every day, just reflecting on that, if you're having a bad day, it's like me personally, I just remember that, okay, there's a reason why I'm going through this. I'll see it later sometime, but there's a reason why this is happening. It just gives you perspective, and it's not just the end, which at this point, I could not imagine that this is it, that we pass and there's nothing. My mind will not let me comprehend that feeling, belief anymore.
No, it's just there's too much evidence to the contrary. You do enough of these readings and enough work on yourself, and
Yeah,
your soul is the eternal part of you, and it's here to have experiences. We may think some of them are pretty bad, but
yeah,
for them, it's the experience.
yeah,
So, and the good ones too. It's just all about that and learning and growing and evolving as much as we can while we're here, and
yes,
trying to hope,
absolutely.
as we do now, offering this service, we want to help other people to heal and be encouraged and find closure and hopefully evolve in their journey, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the messages that I've received from, my siblings over the years too, it's just, initially this is the random thoughts that come into my mind because I just remembered when I had that realization that this was real. I remember years ago, I would have these, imaginary conversations with my brother Jason. And it was times where I'd be just sitting there thinking about him and I would kind of zone out. And in my
Mhm.
mind, we would have this conversation for 5, 10 minutes, and I'd snap out of it going, wow, I'm losing my mind. I was just having this imaginary conversation with my brother. And now looking back, going, no, that was real. That was
Yeah.
100% him. It was
Visit.
real.
It was a visitation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, I've actually heard him shout my name. It's weird when that happens. And he's the only
Yeah.
one, but he was a jokester. So, I mean, he has woken me up out of dead sleep. I'll just hear somebody, I hear his voice, and it's just like, Mike. And I'm like, then I realize what's going on. I'm like,
Ah,
yep, thanks. Thanks
yeah,
for waking me up.
exactly. Yeah, I have a brother in spirit too, and he's come back to help me out from time to. And in fact, one time it was really interesting. Some friends and I had gone to have dinner, and then we were going to go and listen to a medium who we've been, she'd been mentoring a couple of us, and we think a lot of her. She's a really good medium. We went to go do an evening with spirit with her, and my brother came through, and he came through to tell me that the restaurant we had just eaten at, that one of the waiters had stole my credit card number off when they ran my ticket, at
Yeah.
the end paying for the meal, and I needed to check my bank. And Heather said that and brought that through. And we're just looking at each other like, oh my God, can you believe it? So I went back and they really had. They were by the next morning, there were almost $1,000 in fraudulent charges on that bank card. So my brother's looking out for me.
It's just amazing when that stuff happens because
Yeah.
you still pinch yourself when you
I
get the
know.
validation, like, oh my God, that was real.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
It's a
that
trip.
just happened.
Yeah. That's amazing though. Great stories. I know
Yeah.
you probably get to talk to both brothers and your sister from time to time,
It's
because
funny because,
I'll you can
yep,
call them in.
yep, it's even better though, especially like the classes, like when we've been through these classes, and they pop in, or I happen to be watching one of my friends who do lives, and I'll just be sitting there just tuning in, watching the live, and they'll start giving the evidence and nobody's claiming it. And then they'll say it again. I'm like, oh my God, that's me. That's, Jason or Danny or Jackie. I'm like, you're not expecting something yourself, but they just pop in for a quick hello, and it's like, okay, all right, you're
Right.
still around.
Yeah. So that goes to prove, we're no different than anybody else sitting in a gallery, right? We get that deer in the headlights. I get all caught up in the moment and I'm going,
Yeah.
how do they know this stuff? And then I realize, oh, that could be me. Hello. Yeah.
Especially when nobody's claiming it, and then the medium repeats it, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. Right.
habit that we don't like when we're standing there and we're like, oh my God, am I messing up something because nobody's claiming it? Nope, someone's forgetting who their family is in the audience. But
Yeah.
you're right,
Yeah. I've
that
had that happen.
that amnesia is for real. Yeah, a few funny stories with that over the years. So yeah, uncomfortable moments on the medium's part.
Really. Well, let me ask you, kind of on a related note, I know
Mhm.
I know your brothers and your sister understand about you being a medium, and it probably was not at all a big deal to them, but what about the rest of your family? Like, was it difficult for you to come out to your family? And
Funny
I
enough, it
mean,
wasn't. Um, so naturally, my wife was the first person that I told, when this stuff
yeah,
started happening, and she was right along with me watching John Edwards, so she was already into it. Um, so that was good, and it was like a kid with a new toy when she found out that it was happening with me, because now it's like, oh, let's play with this and see what happens. Um, and I was one of those people that I didn't go around telling people, but I didn't hide it either. It was kind of like, I'm not going to shout it from the rooftop, but I'm not going to like hide it. And it's interesting how I got out there because it was totally, totally by accident. I had mentioned my first teacher, Mimi, after like this, because I took a follow-up class with her. And
okay,
after the
yeah,
second class, she was like, would you want to work on a project with me? And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, she started talking about this project, and I'm like, but I don't know what I'm doing. She's like, I've been teaching for a while. You know what you're doing. She thought I was advanced or whatever, however she put it. And she's like, I really would like you to work on this with me. I was like, okay. I was like naive, sure. Now, here's the part I don't remember. Either she didn't tell me or I just forgot. I'm pretty sure she told me. but she did this project, and there was YouTube. She was on YouTube doing this. So we did these channelings. And this was like channeling rock stars and stuff, but she did it in a way that was very credible. It was just nothing like I've ever seen. We would pop on a Zoom call and she'd say, okay, we're going to talk to so and so. And she'd want me to channel this person.
Oh,
Now, she was really into French. She was Canadian, so she was French Canadian. So a lot of the people that she wanted to channel were people I had no idea about. And we would do it and she would validate it through research. So it was like, wow, this is interesting. But we did like Freddie Mercury from Queen. We did Muhammad Ali, just a couple, David Bowie. And again, I knew who they were, but I didn't know anything about their stories. Here's the funny part. She was putting these on YouTube. And shortly after we were doing these projects, I'm having these people reach out to me. And they're like, do you do readings? I'm like, who are you? How did you get my email? And they're like, well, you're on
right.
YouTube. And I was like, I'm not on YouTube. And they're like, yeah, we saw you with Mimi on. I was like, what? So I go to her. I was like, you have a YouTube page? She goes, yeah, that's where I've been putting these videos. She goes, remember we talked about it? I'm like, I must have missed that part. So, and this was like worldwide. There was people watching these. So that's how I kind of got thrown out like very early on, which was probably not by accident. If with the cosmic ways and just, no coincidences. So yeah, that's how one thing started to lead to another very early on, and me just, very uncomfortably doing this work in a very public way. So again, I didn't have to shout it from the rooftops because people were finding me and I didn't say a word to anybody.
Wow. Wow. Didn't have a whole lot of time to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, as they say.
No. And
Just
I
had to
mean,
jump right back in.
it was like I was doing demonstrations within like 3 to 4 months after I took that first class. It was, yeah, I continue to put myself in very uncomfortable situations. So I'm like, well, what's the worst that could
Yeah.
happen?
Right. Right.
So that was a huge tangent, I know, but it was a major part of how I got out there, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way. I mean, you bring
Yeah.
up demonstrations and we call them dems, but it's sort of like what people saw on
Hmm.
crossing over, where you're there and you're with a room full of people and spirits start stepping forward and you start to describe the spirit until somebody in the audience can take it, and sometimes more than one. So then
Yeah.
you get to narrow it down to who it's really for. And at that point, this is where the evidential part that we both feel so strongly about comes in, because you're giving data and evidence until it's easy to narrow it down to one person so that you can then deliver the message. But
Right.
that's what a demonstration is for those of you who may be watching here and not familiar. And yeah, so you're still doing those, right?
Oh yeah. Yes. Circling back though real quick, because a part of telling people, my family was very supportive, everybody.
That's awesome.
Although my mom doesn't talk about it, she knows, my sister who's still living, she's all into this too. So
Yeah.
not that I was worried at that point. Maybe there's a benefit for this coming in later in life, because at 45-ish, I really didn't care at that point what people thought of me. So there wasn't that peer pressure of, oh, I need to fit in. I'm like, no, this is different. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so
Well,
yeah,
all those years in the military, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. This is your deal. This is what you're doing.
yep,
Yeah.
this is a
Pound
part of who I
sand
am.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
But I know
evidential
my,
part.
it's, oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
It's fine. I was just going to talk about it. This is outside of the belief system of a lot of my family.
Mm,
But what's so funny is that my deceased relatives, it's outside of their belief system too, and they come through in spades really strongly all the time. It's like I really wish I could talk to my parents, my family, and
yeah.
tell them about these wonderful experiences that I'm having and the messages that I've been given, but we just, we talk about the weather.
Yeah. It's interesting. That's kind of what I talk to my family about too at times. Like, come on.
Yeah.
What's funny though is like I think we touched on this when we were just on the phone the other night, is my sister or my mom will talk to my sister about me. she'll ask my sister all these questions, and my sister's like, "Why are you asking me? Ask Michael. This is
He's
the one
right
who's,
there.
he's the one who's experiencing this, not me." So I just find that pretty humorous, but
Oh, that's funny. So
it is
you
what
have
it
a
is.
sister who's still here with
Yeah,
us?
yep, I still have a
Yeah.
brother and two sisters that are still here. Yep.
Oh,
So
awesome. Big family.
yeah, it's blended. I mean, my mom remarried, so they were actually my stepbrothers. But I never considered them step. They were my brothers, so
Sure.
I just never considered them other than that. And another, I keep going back to Mimi, but I got to tell you, Mimi was a big part of just everything, and it makes her uncomfortable when I constantly bring that up to her. But she's the one that she's like, "You're an evidential medium." Now, when I was in her classes and all that, I had no idea about different mediums and these labels and such. So I was like,
Right.
okay, great, I'm an evidential medium. It wasn't until months later that I really figured out what that was. And I was like, the amount of pressure now is on me because I'm an evidential medium, and people ask me all the time, what's an evidential medium? I don't know if this is the case for you, but I always have a difficult time answering this because one, I don't believe in the labels, and I believe every medium gives evidence, and I believe every medium is capable of digging deeper and getting deeper into the evidence. But I see a lot of mediums that stay surface level, and I think it's just
Yeah.
just my opinion that we deal with a lot of rejection when we hear the word no, and for some that's crippling. And I see a lot of mediums where I feel like, no, dig deeper. You're just holding yourself back by playing it safe. Um, because I believe everybody's capable of doing the same thing. I mean, why wouldn't we?
Right.
We're spirit, right? Um, but with the evidence, it's like I had this agreement with spirit before I stepped out and started doing this work. It's like, okay, you picked me for some reason. This is happening to me, so you know what you're getting. You know, I drink beer, I cuss, I
Work
eat
with me
meat,
here.
I'm me. Remember that. But I said it's like I'm a skeptic. I was type A personality to the max. I was in a career field that's very scientific, if you will, black and white air traffic control. Um,
Pretty exacting field. No,
yeah,
not a lot of room for error there.
yeah. So it's like, okay, we're going to work on this. It's like we need to have evidence here. I'm not just going to give like fluffy bunny feel good statements. It's like
Right.
we need to figure out how we're going to do this because if I can't give evidence that validates this person in spirit like really quick, this ain't happening.
Yeah.
um
And it's not necessarily name, rank, and serial number, pardon the pun,
no,
but because I don't often get names, but I get enough characteristics and traits and likes and dislikes or memories and whatever they want to bring forward because I'm basically just saying what they tell me. So,
exactly.
but that they always know,
Yeah.
sometimes people come into a reading, the human part of the triangle,
Mhm.
and they have something in their mind that they're not going to believe it's really mom until the medium, says XYZ.
Right.
And that's pretty limiting for the mom because they may have something totally different that they want to talk about having nothing to do with the puppy they had as a child or whatnot.
Right.
So
and and that's I think one of the most difficult parts of this journey is educating people on what this is and what it's not, because
yeah.
thanks to TV, and I'll just leave it at thanks to TV. um there's this
Yes.
idea that we're having this conversation with this person in spirit, and it's not at all a conversation like you and I are having. Um, it's
Wow.
we're taking energy and translating it into physical language, by things we're experiencing in our mind, either hearing a thought, seeing a thought image, or a sense of knowing and just saying what we're experiencing. And like you
Or
said,
that
it's not,
feeling, like that
yeah,
feeling you had that your sister was wrapping her arms around you. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that
And,
that's
it's, we're just following the breadcrumbs, whatever they're giving
yeah.
us, we're going to talk about. Do we get it right 100% of the time? Absolutely not. It's nobody's 100% perfect. Um, but
Right.
there's enough there. I don't think I've ever had a reading where something didn't come through that made sense for somebody. They're always there.
Yeah, even the best mediums, the most world famous mediums that say they're never wrong,
Mm-mm. No.
statistically, the science has shown when these people, they've done lots of tests and stuff on mediums, double blind tests and stuff, and they're about 85,
Yeah.
88% at best for
Yeah.
in accuracy. So I don't
Yep.
feel too terrible about the nose. I feel a little sorry for spirit because they're having to work with me
Oh,
through
believe
my
me.
frame of reference.
Yeah. I
And
feel for them. For yeah.
yeah. So because they're always there, they know exactly what they want to say. And, then they have to deal with getting it through me. So yeah, it's a constant back and forth, I guess, to just sort of take my ego self and set it aside so that I can be that vessel. The
Right.
better I'm able to do that, the more accurate I get.
Yeah, it's like that's one of the most difficult things is just setting aside, this isn't about us. I'm not supposed to understand these messages
Nope.
coming through. Just say what I just say what I'm experiencing. Um, and most of the time it makes sense to the person. And again, I don't try to interpret what's coming through. I don't try to understand it. I don't try to embellish it. If they show this is my running thing and it has been for years. If the person in spirit shows me a pig riding a pony, I'm going to talk about the pig riding a pony because I don't, it's not for me, it's for my client.
Right.
They're probably going to understand what that reference is for. Um,
Yeah, that could
so
be huge for them. That could have
yeah,
so much meaning. We just have no idea.
yep. It's like my brother Jason. I there's a story where when he was still living, he actually shot a bullet out of a deer rifle into my other brother's Corvette by accident. Long story there, funny one, but I mean, when he comes through to a medium and all he has to say is, show me, if he starts talking about a deer rifle or a gun, they don't have to tell me anything other because I know what's coming. Usually it follows a car. He wants me to talk about this car, and it's like, that's all you need to tell me, because I know
Yeah,
exactly what he's referencing.
I know that story. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
but I
it's
think if
pretty funny.
the client goes in with an open mind and just take what comes through, let it just enjoy the experience. Don't have a
Yes,
set agenda going in.
there's sometimes people are still so deeply in their grief that
Mhm.
they can't really relax.
Yeah.
And you do try to do the best you can for them, of course. Um, I try to recommend that they wait, not at least a few weeks,
I
so
usually
that
tell them,
the big waves of grief have started to subside just a little
yeah,
bit, and they can breathe. You know, when it's not so raw.
yeah,
But
and, and
sometimes people just really want to try to connect back in right away, and
yeah,
they're handling it, and so we do the best we can.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I usually,
I'll get emails afterward going, I know you mentioned something about the stacking the trash cans, and I didn't know what in the world that meant. But after I talked to my sister, she said, "Oh yeah, don't you remember that time?" And then I remembered, that kind of thing. We'll get
oh
those
yeah,
kinds of emails. You probably do too.
yeah,
So
because I mean, in the moment, especially if the things are making sense, and if this is like a client's first experience, their human mind is trying to make sense of what is actually happening here. So that it's like total amnesia.
yeah,
Um, they just in that it's probably grief and shock at the same time that this is actually happening.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, a lot of things will make sense later on. And like you, I mean, I've lost track of the amount of times people have reached out afterwards, and just like, oh my God. And I remember I have to share this because this paints the picture. It was my very first or second dem. Um, I still remember to this day, there was two ladies in the front row and their father came through and he starts talking about, he wants me to talk about these in-ground swimming pools. And they're looking at me like I grew a third head or something. And they're like, no, 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 no. So I'm thinking I'm bombing. finally, this lady, like 2 rows back, raises her hand. She's like, "Can I know these two. Can I talk to them for a second?" And I'm like, "Sure." And she looks at him. She goes, "What was your father's business? Like, what do you guys do for a living?" "Oh, we have a pool company where we install pools." And I'm like looking at them like, "Are you kidding me?" And they were like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." So it
Yeah,
happens.
it really does. I mean, even stuff like that. Yeah, you're right.
Oh
You're
my
right.
God. So many
So,
memories over the years and entertaining ones too. So
exactly. But so, Michael, if somebody wanted to get a reading, a one-on-one reading with you, would they like just go to your website? I mean, I'll put
mhm.
your website information, of course, in the
Yeah,
description, as I said, but they can contact you that way and you can set something up.
absolutely. Right now I offer 30-minute sessions and 50-minute sessions.
Oh, good.
So either one-on-one, or if two family members want to sit for a session, that's there. I can do, bigger groups. Um, so yeah,
Mhm.
we can work something out. For what they can schedule that's on my website, it's usually just one person or, two family members, but I can work with
Right.
people if they want a third or, maybe a fourth. Um, but yeah, I work exclusively through my website, and there's a good reason for that. I'm sure anybody who's been on social media is aware of the fraud that happens there. So it's like a protection layer. I do not communicate through Messenger or Facebook. I'm on
Right.
TikTok. TikTok is worse than Facebook. So I tell people it's like, if you're interested in my services, please, you have to go through my website because that just prevents the fraud from happening, you know.
So you are on TikTok?
I am. Although I
Right. I
took a
wasn't
break
aware of that.
about 6 months ago, and because of that, my account was completely deleted. So at
Oops.
that time, I had 5,000 or so people, and I was doing lives on there. And then I walked away for a bit. So now I'm in that starting over phase. And TikTok's weird because you can't do lives until you have 1,000 followers. So I'm
Right.
still slowly working up to that, but you know,
Okay.
it's interesting.
I'll be
TikTok,
sure and add your handle there
interesting.
so maybe we could come and support you too. I really
Yeah.
appreciate everybody coming out, on YouTube and supporting me in my efforts. So
Yeah.
I'm
I'm on
happy to do
YouTube
the
as
same.
well, but
It's fun to watch. I love
yeah,
watching other mediums work. It's
I do
great.
too. I love just supporting. We're a small group of people that, a lot of times what I found is like we become really close because nobody else
Mhm.
understands what we're experiencing. People can try to empathize with us about what we deal with. But other mediums who have been through that same, ups and downs and the trust issues that we have and the burnout. And I mean, the list goes on and on. People don't see that part of this part of mediumship. They see the happy 5-10 minute readings on TV and everybody's happy. The mediums have this wonderful
Yeah.
life and everything's peachy. It's like, yeah, you're seeing the tip of the iceberg. You don't see the other stuff that comes along with this journey and the amount of courage people have to step out and actually do this work. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the toughest things I've ever did, you know. Um,
Well, and we're also really, I prefer to think that, that some of us, especially the ones of us who don't have a camera crew walking around with us all the time, we can't do fly by, just pop up readings in the grocery store checkout line.
oh
We would
no.
never do that. To me, it's a violation of their privacy and my code of ethics. I just couldn't drop a bomb on somebody like that.
I mean, you
So,
have no idea what phase of the grief process. That's like you said,
exactly.
I wouldn't even consider doing something like that. And even
Yeah.
though TV, it's staged, these people know it's going to happen. They don't know who, but they know like so and so is going to be here at this store at this time. So there's a chance
Yeah.
you may get read. So it's not like a complete shock. But I've known people who have done that, and the result they got was not anything close to what they were expecting. They're expecting, oh, thank you, and it got like, get away from me, you know? Because I
Right.
mean, just no, it's something you don't do.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to intrude on people.
No.
So yeah, I know. But it's good. And I appreciate getting that information from you so that we can come in and, respectfully follow you and see
Yeah.
what's going on. So anyway, well, I guess, do you have anything coming up that you're planning or that's going on? I don't want to like leave that out if you've
Oh,
got some lives or any other things coming up.
no, actually, right now is a pretty slow time, and it's on purpose. It's summer here in North Dakota where I live. So summers are short. So I've been out just enjoying the nice weather while it lasts. So I've kind of, I mean, I'm not shut down. My calendar's closed on my website. You can still reach out, and we can work a session. We can book one. But my automated calendar, I'll probably leave that off until at least end of September.
Right.
And get back into doing demonstrations and probably back on doing Facebook Lives. And I do a lot of Zoom group readings too, like the Dems over Zoom. So
Yeah.
it'll be early fall when I really get really back into it.
Well, good. When you're ready to get back into it, get in touch. We'll do one together. That'd be
Absolutely.
fun.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for being here tonight. I really
Thank you.
appreciate hearing your story and all about your experience. And it's been a real pleasure. So
Thank
I
you very
will
much.
say until next time rather than say goodbye.
There we
And thanks
go.
everyone for tuning in.
Bye, everybody.
See y'all now.